Hey, Mark Rodriguez here. You're watching America's second Cure from Zanya, the fighting podcast. And with me are...
Oh, Wendy, also known as Jupi. Hi, guys.
Oh, it's got to be me next, I guess. Oh, I was waiting for the big entrance coming in second to last. Who booked this? Anyway, yes, it is indeed the God of Thunder, the Lord of Rock and Roll, the icon of old school, your ex-wife's favorite wrestler, and the reason she's your ex-wife, Rikki Roxx, coming at you from the vault. Yes. And by the way, check out From the Vault on YouTube. Not enough people have been doing that. There's a lot of cool stuff on there. Anyway, that's me. And now we're going to throw it to the man in the dark, Mr. Witness Protection himself.
And this is Johnny Rodriguez.
Coming at us from an undisclosed location somewhere underground in the Eastern Seaboard. That's what I heard.
He's to keep with the theme, he's like an Interpol and all that stuff. And he's all like, yes, I did see M. Bison kill Chun-Li's father and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, to continue the theme, last time we were talking about Street Fighter. We went into Street Fighter 1, 2, and actually Part 3. I forgot, did we go with the Alpha Series 2?
We talked about the alphas. We talked a little bit about the EXs, which real quick aside before we get too deep into it, because we do have some more stuff to cover. But God, what a great show that was. What a great show that was to revisit. Your marks out there, better go back and check the podcast we did on all things Street Fighter Parts 1, 2, and 3. And yeah, since then, I actually had the opportunity to go back and replay some of the EX, the first Street Fighter EX. And I got to tell you, man, having not touched it since probably like 1997 or so, I thought it was really good, a little bit easy compared to some of the Street Fighter games, but even a guy like me who's not big in the Street Fighters I'm not good at them at all. But I had a lot of fun with it, and it really once more makes me a little sad that the EX series is sort of like the forgotten series for various reasons, because it definitely deserves it. It's better than its reputation suggests, for sure. So I have since picked up number 3. 2 is really crazy expensive right now, EX2. But yeah, I had a fun time with EX1. Definitely going to look at part 3. So yeah, I wish I had a chance to play them before we did the last show. I got them a little bit after the last show. Yeah, EX series gets a thumbs up from me. I think that it was just a little bit ahead of its time and challenged too many people's ideas of what Street Fighter was or supposed to be, you know? It didn't look quite like Street Fighter. It felt a little bit different. I think it was developed by different people. You probably know more about that.
Yeah, made by a company called Arika. And I guess it's kind of weird because they have like the rights to use the Street Fighter characters because they have their own made-up characters too, like Kyrie and Alan Snyder and all of them. And in fact, they made a game called Fighting Layer that was just those characters, not the Street Fighter ones, just, Alan Snyder, Hokuto, Kairi, Garuda, and all them, And recently for the PS4, they did release a new updated version, what do you call it, Fighting EX Layer. And the weirdest thing is that they actually have Terry Bogard cameo from Fatal Fury in there. So that's kind of cool. And then on that side, they made an SNK fighting game that's all women. It's called SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy or something like that. But the thing is, Skullomania from the EX games guest stars in that one. So that's like random, So they're not completely forgotten. I think due to the rights issues, like I doubt we're not going to see like Skullomania DLC in a Street Fighter game, I don't think. But yeah.
Good explanation into that there. Yeah, like I said, definitely was a bit of a deviation from standard Street Fighter, but still the EX series gets thumbs up from me. I had a good time with it. If people are sleeping on it, I will reiterate my opinion that they should go back and take a look at it because it's definitely better than a lot of people remember, I would think. And, I like it better than some of the other polygon-based fighters of that era. Shoot me, but that's my opinion. And I'm a neophyte with these things. I only know I'm not deep into it at all. I can barely beat the computer. I just know what I have fun with, and some of these games are just more fun on a very basic level than others. And I had a lot of fun with that game as a very basic bitch. So, yeah. Just wanted to throw that before we got into the meat of today's episode.
Yeah, so today we're going to go into Street Fighter 4, 5, and 6. And 6, we'll probably go not too much because everyone knows about 6. It's the game people are playing now. But we will do a special thing where the four of us are going to choose 5 different, like, the characters we wish would appear as future DLC. And we'll see it if it comes true. You know what I mean? But yeah, so with Street Fighter 4, one of the big things about that is that Capcom was kind of like dying off in terms of the fighting game thing. They weren't making that many games. And I mean, just re-releasing the old ones, but not any new ones. And the last one they made at the time really sucked. It's Capcom Fighting Jam, also known as Capcom Fighting Evolution in the States. It was supposed to be kind of like a Capcom crossover, but just Capcom characters. And the game was just very bare bones and just boring, and no one really liked it that much. Apparently, it was going to be a 3D Capcom game originally. Oh, yeah, that's the one. I got it, too.
Yeah, I got this for her for Christmas. I heard good things back. You're saying it's so good?
Throw it at your face afterwards, or?
I read people say it was good.
Yeah, it's okay. It's just kind of weird. Basically, it splits up the characters. You get some representing Street Fighter, and then Street Fighter 3, Alpha, Final Fight, and Warzord, which is also known as, oh God, I forgot what Red Earth is the American name for the series. It's Warzord in Japan. And the thing is, the characters fight with their specific rules. So the Street Fighter 2 characters fight basic. They can't do like the air blocks and junk like that. And the Alpha one's got super combos. And Darkstalker's characters do their whatevers. But the thing that's so lazy is that all the characters are ripped sprites from all their games. So some of the characters like the Darkstalker's characters look extremely flat in 2D compared to the more rendered Red Earth characters and stuff.
I haven't had a chance to mess with it yet. That sounds funny, but I mean, I heard good things. I read good things. I didn't hear like it was fantastic or anything. I mostly heard that it was a neat idea that some people didn't love the execution of, but others did. So it sounds very interesting. I'll definitely check it out for sure. I mean, over here, well.
Now, originally it was supposed to be a 3D game, 3D beat-em-up game and stuff. And there was basically the original, I don't know about the plot of this one. I think this one is just, tournament fight, yay. But the original one had a plot where all the Capcom people had to gather together because they were like bombs set in Metro City, and you had to take out like the 4 new characters that set up the bombs and everything. And the thing is, out of all those characters, the only one that survived that they're like, hey, let's bring her onto this one is Ingrid, the girl in blue. If you notice, she's like the only new character in the whole game. And it's very noticeable because her animations are very smooth and overly detailed compared to everybody else. You know what I mean?
I could see that. I'm definitely interested in checking it out. But to your original point, yeah, like it had been a while since it had been a very long time, over a decade since the previous mainline Street Fighter. The bloom had kind of fallen off that rose. And a lot had changed in the fighting game space after Street Fighter 3 came out. I mean, I remember the early 2000s and seeing, you had more Virtua Fighter and Tekken stuff. You had the 3D Mortal Kombat games on the home consoles, which were pretty good for what they were. Some people don't like them. I liked them. People at the time liked them. You can go back and look at them.
Was going bankrupt and stuff. So, like, yeah, like these weird games made by Aeolus and other companies and...
Some people at Capcom were pushing for Street Fighter 4, but yeah, there was pushback because, like, well, that time is over now. Some people thought that, but then, what was it? It was the when they put out Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting on Xbox Live Arcade, that blew up so huge that Capcom was like, well, I guess there is actually interest in this. If they'll play the old stuff and they'll pay money for this game we put out, 20 years ago, maybe they'll do it for a new game. So that got the ball rolling finally on what came to be Street Fighter 4. And it went through a few notorious changes during the pitch and design phase. I don't know. We can talk about those as it goes on. But yeah, what ultimately became Street Fighter 4 ended up being pretty successful. And then Capcom did their usual thing with their add-ons, their expansion packs, what have you, so forth and so on. But by this point, if you don't expect it, I don't know who you think you're dealing with, but it ain't Capcom. But yeah, so that was, 2008 was a pretty big year for old Capcom after a decade of drought, so to speak.
Yeah. Just real quick, I'm drinking a, what do you call it? I guess like a fruit drink. It's called cold pressed juice from Roots. It's a cool place to check out if you're ever in Pennsylvania. I went on a trip there recently. It's called Snap, and it has apple, lemon, and ginger mixed up, and it's pretty good and healthy. But yeah, back on Street Fighter.
I'm drinking Guinness.
Oh, there you go.
I got it on a recent trip to the liquor store, and this is extra stout. It says it's a product of Ireland, and it contains stuff that makes you feel good.
There you go. That reminds me, when I went to that place, I forgot that there was a liquor store across the street. I got to get there next time. I like my bottles of sake once in a while. Or sake, I should say. But
Sake's the good
anyway,
stuff.
Street Fighter 4 came out, and it just blew up, and it was,
When did it come out? When did it come out, Mark Rodriguez?
Was it 2008 or 9?
In Japan, the coin-op cabinet came out July 18, 2008. And it hit North America that August. And then it came out February 2009 on the consoles. But yeah.
Yep. So that one brought in, I like the game. I like the home console version because they did something that people have forgotten or that we don't do anymore because nowadays it's all DLC. The console version actually had hidden characters that you unlock through the game, so that was cool. But the original base roster, I believe, was all the 12 original Road Warriors. They're all in there. For people that don't know, just real quick, Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Guile, Honda, Zangief, Dalsim, Sagat, Balrog, Vega, Bison. Then you had the 4 new characters. We'll go into them in a bit. And then we had, I think it was Cammy and Fei Long by default. But then in the game as you play it and you unlock and stuff, you can also unlock Gen, Sakura, Rose, and surprisingly, Goken, which survived somehow. Oh, and of course, Upper was in the game too.
Is that how you say that?
Hmm?
Is that how you say that name?
Yeah, Goken.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, 19 characters in the arcade version, 25 in console. Pretty cool.
So basically, this is also where they start with the retroactive stuff because this game, which confused some people, takes place after Street Fighter 2, but before Street Fighter 3. And the whole plot is that I heard Bison was either, I think Bison came back because he was supposed to be dead at the end of Street Fighter 2.
Wait. What game are we on again? Because I just love. I get confused.
Street Fighter 4.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
okay, think about it.
So apparently the timeline goes Street Fighter, and then Street Fighter 2, and then
Alpha.
I was only going with the main ones, but yeah, and then you get 2, and then you get 4, and then you get 5, and then you get 3.
Yeah, and then 6 finally takes place after 3. Which I was surprised. I was expecting more and more bullshit, But anyways, Bison comes back. Shadowloo's in shambles. I know that. So there's a new evil organization called SIN, and Seth is the one in charge, and Seth is the one that holds the Street Fighter 4 tournament. And apparently he's supposed to be another one. He's based on those monitor cyborgs from the Street Fighter anime. That's kind of cool. He's supposed to be like one of many, like they're like empty shells or whatever for Bison, but he gained self-awareness and like did the tournament on his own accord,
When are we gonna learn not to mess with that shit?
Yep. So the 4 new characters.
Ghost in the Shell? I don't know.
Oh god, yeah. The 4 new characters, starting off with Street Fighter 4 because the other ones add more, We got Crimson Viper. She's like a spy that's out to stop SIN, and she kind of butts head with Chun-Li because it's kind of like, this is my mission. No, this is my mission. No, that kind of crap. And then we have, trying to go in order of coolness, but the other ones are pretty weird. We got El Fuerte, super dynamic cooking guy. He's a Mexican wrestler that's also a chef, but his gimmick is that he cooks bad, you know what I mean? But he has to go out there and explore the world and get the best recipes from the different countries he visits and all that shit. And then we have Rufus, right? Rufus, big fat dude.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, that one's cooler than this one. And this guy's obsessed with Ken Masters. And he thinks he has it's like a one-sided vendetta with Ken Masters, while Ken Masters is like, who are you? And the thing is, he literally confuses every other blonde type guy for Ken, but when he's like next to Ken, he doesn't know who he is. So it's like, okay. And then the other one is Abel. So Abel is actually supposed to be another one of those clone bodies for Bison or whatever. But he gained awareness, but to the point that he doesn't know he's that. So he has amnesia, So that's his plot. He's a good guy and all that, and he fights like some grappling savate style or something, I think, or sambo style, something like that. But yeah, those are the 4 new characters for the game. And the game in general, it plays like Street Fighter always plays. Same general. They didn't reinvent the wheel. It's just seeing them with the new graphical style and the new cinematic looking supers, camera angles, and all that shit. And the only thing it has is the new focus attack, where you kind of if you do like a strike, you can make the people dizzy for a moment and take advantage of that. For all the
I'm not good at that.
players and.
They apparently were trying to kind of merge the gameplay of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo with a little bit of stuff from Third Strike. So I think they pulled it off pretty well. I like the new gameplay elements. One thing I got to say right off the bat, and I always say that I'm a neophyte with these fighting games, but before we jumped on today, I wanted to refresh my memory of Street Fighter 4 because I hadn't played it in a very long time. And the one thing I can safely say is I'm still awful at it. I'm not good at this game. It's hard for me, bro, but I still appreciate it.
Now, one of the things about Street Fighter 4 is that when you play 5 and 6, they play a bit more fast-paced and the controls are a lot more looser and a lot more forgiving. So I found out the hard way a couple of weeks ago, when you go back to playing Street Fighter 4 after playing 5 and 6 for years, not even touching 4, I don't remember like that. I remember it, playing like Street Fighter, but no, it's very stiff, very unforgiving. You have to be very precise with the buttons. And then like these guys online that probably never stopped playing Street Fighter 4, they're just like wrecking my shit.
I only ever play these games on the easiest setting against the computer, and I'm okay with that. Anything above that is a little above my pay grade, punching above my weight. I've never been good at these games. I just like having fun with them because I appreciate them for what they are. And, as long as it's playable for me, I'm happy with it. And even though I'm not particularly good at it, I can beat the computer. But I remembered I hadn't played it in years. I've only beaten it once with Ryu, I think. And since then, I played the 30th anniversary collection and beat all of those, beat all the main Street Fighter 2s, beat the Alphas, beat Street Fighter 3, all those things. Played EX, beat it a few times. So I'm used to those older feeling Street Fighter games. So then jumping from those, the most recent one I played was EX1. And then from that to this one, oh man, it was definitely, there was some things felt familiar right away that still transferred over, but it was definitely different timing, different amount of reliance on blocking. Yeah, a lot of differences that got me handing my ass pretty good, but I still had fun with it. The visuals, I think, were and are fantastic in Street Fighter 4. I really love the visual style they chose, absolutely. The way certain moves get all cinematic and the camera pans out or spins around and all that good stuff, that is really cool stuff. They were definitely thinking outside the box as far as presentation of how a 2D fighting game should look, because you can still have certain moments go in a more three-dimensional direction. They weren't afraid to do that, take risks. That's something from EX that was they sort of leaned into that even back then. One thing I love about Street Fighter as a franchise is that it's always borrowing from and building on its own history. Nothing feels totally new or fresh or unfamiliar about it. And there can be arguments for and against that. But I think it's really cool that it's so self-referential. And, you can see similarities from the first game to the latest game and at all points along the way. That's why I think it's a cool franchise, even though I can only barely get into it myself. But having touched on all elements of it at various points, I think it's all awesome. And I think this one is a really good, really great addition. I mean, it's the one that reignited the fever for the franchise after 10 years,
Yeah. One thing I do want to say, though, I want to ask Jupi a particular question that came up during our gameplays. But first, what did Johnny think? Because one thing about Street Fighter 4 also is that was the game that was on when we started Video Game Masters. And so we were going into those matches and then Super Street Fighter 4 and all the other ones. That was our era when our show first started. And we also went to Anime Vegas, and a couple of times that con is unfortunately long dead now. But we got to meet the voice actors of Ryu, Chun-Li, Guile, and Rufus throughout the years. So that was kind of cool. But anyways, Johnny, what do you think of the game in general since you kind of lived through it?
Okay, so obviously it's been a long time, since I've last played this game. And even visually, I mean, all I can say is that this game, I think it actually saved the Street Fighter franchise. Like it brought it back in style, like 100%. I like the fact that they went with totally different graphics because, after having the Street Fighter Alpha Plus whatever series with the same kind of graphic style for a while, and then, obviously the Street Fighter 2 franchise and the Street Fighter 3, like the graphics, like Street Fighter 3 that was pretty good too. But Street Fighter 4 really went a little bit outside the box. And honestly, I think Street Fighter 4 was still kind of like, graphically speaking, it's kind of like they try to do the whole 3D thing, but they still want to keep their essence. So it's still a 2D fighting game, it might feel a little bit 3D-ish here and there, but for the most part, it is still a 2D game. But the graphic definition is so good. And it's like the first time in a while that you've seen Street Fighter characters look so well polished and so well detailed and well animated, and it just looked a little bit more realistic compared to the previous Street Fighter games. And in terms of the gameplay, I think the gameplay, from what I remember, isn't anything too different from the older Street Fighter games. So I think that gameplay wise, it still feels like a good walk to the ballpark. So like the traditional Street Fighter game, they might add a few things here and there, but for the most part, it's still a Street Fighter. Well, Street Fighter-ish game.
What I wanted to say, you mentioned the graphics. Now, to me, like, we talked about the Alpha series, and the graphics for that was very much like an anime. That was like a video game that looked like an anime almost. So to me, Street Fighter 4 almost looked like a comic book come to life in a sense, as a fighting game. I really liked that 3D definition and just the art style in general. Like what you were saying is, like it's definitely very distinctive. And right away, it looks and feels a little bit more like a proper successor to Street Fighter 2 than Street Fighter 3 did, I think. Like, just right from the way you look at it, it's almost like, oh yeah, this is how it should look. This is how it should be. Something just clicks about it. I don't know if you'd agree, but that's how it feels to me.
They also had like these, like you mentioned about the comic book thing, like these ink kind of splotches and stuff that appear when they do some of the moves and some of the things.
Yeah, it feels like it feels almost like somebody's drawing a comic book or a cartoon in front of you. Like, it's a really cool art style. I really dig it.
Now, Jupes, what were your thoughts on the ring announcer?
Annoying, distracting, annoying. Like I said, I didn't even remember there being an announcer in the game, honestly.
I remember the beginning part, though. I remember the whole, like, fists will fly at this location and stuff like that. But I forgot that he was talking throughout, like, the whole match or whatever.
It was just too distracting. And like I said, I don't remember that in the arcade version, but that's the only version I've never played. So
I missed the arcade one entirely. I only played it on 360.
Well, I never had anything higher than like a Wii, so yeah. So I like Street Fighter 4, okay, but like I said, I can only play the arcade version. And I was in Japan when I played it, and it was still fairly new. So, I didn't have enough yen to play through the whole game. I couldn't use up all my money, I had other things to do. And I like the way the controller is like easy to get, because I just decided to just use at the default. If I'm in the arcade, I want to try to use Ryu because he's always like the more balanced character, and it's easier to do his moves. If I just think back to how I used to play, original Street Fighter 2. And before that point, the last game I had played of a Street Fighter game was like Champion Edition. or Super Street Fighter 2 or Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo or something like that. I've never played 3. I've never played the alpha games. My cousin had them, but
Oh
I
man,
didn't play them
you still
myself.
haven't. Well, wait. If Mark's moving in with you, Mark has the anniversary collection, so you get to play those because you got to play those. You got to play the
Yeah.
threes. You got to play the alphas. You know, even me. My wife always teases me because she's the one who's actually into the fighting games and everything. But it's like I definitely love them. I love them in spite of my badness at them. I think they're so neat. I guess that's my dad in me because he couldn't play video games for shit, but he thought they were the coolest thing. Like after Duck Hunt, that's the last game he ever played because they were too complicated for him after that. But, you know, he would watch me play sometimes and he would just be like, man, that's the coolest thing. I can't believe they could do that stuff.
Oh, that's
And
Ultra Street Fighter 4 behind you, right?
this is regular Street Fighter 4 behind
Ah.
me. Yeah, I was brushing up. I was brushing up right before we jumped on today, and yeah, I am not good. But some of it still carries over from the EX games, though. Like I was trying to do a ladder with Ken real quick, and I could pull off the basic special moves, but I still struggle with the super combo and that ultra finisher thing. Those I'm having trouble with.
Now, that's another thing. So have you played the other ones, Super Street Fighter and Ultra Street Fighter and whatever else?
Not yet, because I just recently got her Ultra for Christmas, so now we have all of them for 360. And Xbox Live Arcade is shutting down for 360 in June, so I have to go ahead and get all the DLC and crap and all the updates and everything. So I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do a big run on all the versions of 4.
Yeah. Yeah, so
It's-
I will say,
that the Xbox is shutting down their 360 store. I think it's July 29, I want to say. And
yeah, 29.
I'm gonna be buying a couple of games. I'm gonna be buying. They got Virtual Fighter 2 on there, and they got Ultimate Dare Life 2 on there. And I found out that if you own Part 3, which I do, it unlocks Hitomi in that game, even though she technically didn't appear till 3. And
I have-
also, oh, sorry, that's just real quick. I got one of the Blaze Blue games, and I found out that there's DLC characters that I never had, so I'll buy them too, before.
Yeah, I have a ton of 360 games. This was not on purpose. I'm not a brand loyalist by any means. I get as many consoles and systems as possible. Like, you know, sometimes you can even see them behind me depending on where the camera's set up. I mean, most recently I was playing Super Nintendo before today. I was playing Legend of the Mystical Ninja. And yeah, so I play everything. But somehow the 360 managed to be the console that I accumulated the largest library of games for out of everything, going all the way back to Atari. Because I have Atari, ColecoVision, NES, Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, Wii U, Switch, Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, Sega Saturn, Sega Dreamcast, PS2, PS3. You know, I got all that shit, you know. But somehow out of all of it, the 360 is what I ended up with the most games for out of everything. There's a lot of good stuff on there. But yeah, so now I'm kind of in a mad dash before the end of summer to I have a ton of games I have to get updates and I got to buy DLC for. So I'm feeling a little bit crunched now, but I guess that's the reality of it. But, you know, it's a great system that I'm always going to go back to and I'm always going to play, so it's worth it. You know, not all those games are getting re-released on the newer Xboxes. So, you know, but point of fact, like 2 years ago, I was trying to download a game for my Xbox 360 and it wasn't letting me, even though I paid for it, but it didn't download. So I had to get on the phone with the guy from Microsoft and he walked me through it and it took like 2 hours, but we fixed it. But at one point he kind of was like, I don't want to, you know, I don't mean for this to sound any specific way, but so why would you be buying the game for the Xbox 360 instead of perhaps the Xbox One or something like that? You know, he was trying so hard not to be like, what are you, a broke bitch or a dumbass? Like, why don't you play the new shit, fuck face? You know, that's what he wanted to say. I'm like, I still play my 360 all the time. So I saw it on the Xbox Marketplace and it said I could buy it. So I'm trying to buy it. It's as simple as that. He's like, fair enough. But he was like, yeah, from now on, you probably want to maybe download it to your Xbox One since you have one of those and you probably won't have these issues. Like the bug I was having I was the first person that the Microsoft tech team, I was the first one to notify them of this bug because nobody had bought anything on the 360 marketplace in so long. He was like, this is the first I'm hearing of this issue. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. You love when that fucking happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he was very helpful though. I can't remember his name, but he was a good dude. But yeah. So I have to get all the DLC for 4, Super, and Arcade and Ultra, and then I'm gonna do a run.
Mm. Now, another thing also, funny story for us is that we were still in Mexico back then. So what happened is that one time when we went to because we had to actually go places. The internet wasn't as it is now, so we had to actually go to the whatever place to pay the water bill, electric bill, whatever. So we went to the place to pay the phone bill, and they had some kind of promotion where you could choose either an Xbox 360 or a PS3, and you could just take it home. And basically speaking, as you pay your bill down, you're paying down like the console. You know what I mean? So that's kind of cool. And the only reason we went, whole, like you said, brand loyalty or whatever, but the only reason we went for the Xbox 360 over the PS3 was because it cost like $100 less. So
Same.
Yeah.
That's how I got that first, I had no problem with the PS3. I have a lot of games I have the same game on both systems quite a few times, but yeah, no, that's when we talk about Street Fighter V, we'll talk about a very specific thing that pisses me off about it because I still haven't played it, but we'll get there. We'll get there. We're still on 4, which is
So right now we're gonna get to Super Street Fighter 4. And
real quick, before we do that, now, one thing I discovered that I thought was super interesting, because I had never heard this before, was that very early on in the development, I don't know if my wife even knows about this, but very early on in the development of Street Fighter 4, there was a really cool pitch for a concept. It didn't get very far, but they wanted to mix the 2.5D fighting engine with like a third person 3D action God of War kind of stage brawling. So the pitch was called a Street Fighter 4 flashback mode. And the story of it was going to go into Ryu's backstory before and through the first couple Street Fighters. So in between the fighting stages, he'd be running around like Kratos and God of War doing all kinds of crazy third-person stuff. I guess sort of like Shaolin monks, I suppose, would have been what they were going for. And in addition to that, like all the arcade Street Fighter games would have been included as part of like a package thing. I didn't get past the proposal, but I really am kind of mad they didn't do anything with it because I would play that game. I would play the hell out of that game. Like, that sounds like kind of like Street Fighter Shaolin monks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You remember the Mortal Kombat game?
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me. I would play the hell out of that game. But I don't know if you guys ever heard about that. I read about it.
Yeah, I have when it first came out. It was like the sequel to, well, not really a sequel, but it was in the style of mythologies with Sub-Zero and everything, basically.
Yeah, like I would play that game with Ryu doing all that third-person stuff, and then the fighting stages for like boss fights and stuff, and that would have been a really cool thing to see executed. Maybe one day they'll revisit it. Capcom doesn't seem like they're in a real experimental.
I mean, they're kind of doing it with Street Fighter 6 World Tour mode. It's like you make an avatar character and you go around and you go through Metro City, you meet the other Street Fighters, you train, you mix and match your moves. So it's kind of like that. I guess they must have gotten that concept from that.
I mean, it screamed fun and unique to me. So I was like, yeah, that's something they could. But probably best they didn't do that for Street Fighter 4. But, it's a concept to me that had potential. Now, one thing that also got scrapped during the pitch phase was they were originally going to have bonus stages in the arcade version, like the car and the barrels and stuff like that. They were going to do that, but then they pulled it out because they're like, well, that's like a whole minute or two of the game where you can't die or lose or whatever. You're just, it's a bonus thing where they hate that because then that's 2 minutes where the arcade owner's not making money. That's 2 minutes where somebody's not putting a quarter in. That's why that stuff got phased out in the first place. Because with arcade games, there's this like, formula where you have to drop in a quarter like every 45 seconds or some shit like that. So bonus stages where your character can't die or lose and stuff like that became very frowned upon. So that's why they didn't do that until the home releases later on, which were
Wow. Wow, now that you mention it, I don't remember doing any bonus stuff. Now, I'm just trying to remember back because this was like 2010 or whatever. So it's hard to remember. So
they literally said that it's because that's a whole minute or two where somebody's not putting a fresh quarter in. Can't do it.
No,
have to be putting a quarter
I
in.
must be real pissed off back in Street Fighter 2 and people could like play the whole game with Ryu and not lose. As long as it's up to challenge or whatever.
So before we jump ahead to the Super Street Fighter 4, just bears mentioning that the home versions for 360 and PS3, they added some cool features like online play. They added 6 new stages to the game, which is really cool. There was a challenge mode, and you got to choose between the English or Japanese voices for the characters. So that was all that's pretty cool stuff for the home versions, which is what I played. So thought that bared mentioning. Street Fighter 4. Definitely later versions improved on it, but they came out swinging right out of the gate with Street Fighter 4. First version, the vanilla, is that what they call it? The vanilla version?
Yeah, they call it now. Whenever a game got a super whatever and you go back to the original, they always call it the vanilla version.
Well, they made a hell of a first impression, even though I remember people not liking the theme song and thinking that Seth was a cheap bitch.
Yeah. I mean, you get used to him, but he's a cheap asshole.
That's what I heard. I beat him once.
So yeah, like I said, Super Street Fighter 4 came out a bit later, and they had all these cool characters. So in the first Street Fighter 4, we only had Cammy and Fei Long. So from the new challengers. So Super Street Fighter 4 added DJ and T-Hawk, so now you got the whole set. Then
10 new characters. 10 new characters for Super Street Fighter.
They added Cody and Guy from Final Fight / Alpha. They had let's see here, Dudley, Ibuki, and Makoto from Street Fighter 3. That's pretty cool. Some Street Fighter 3 love in there. And then all new characters. They added Hakan, who is the Turkish oil wrestler guy. Yeah, he's similar to like Honda and Zangief. He wants to prove to the world that his style of wrestling is like the best or whatever. And he also, of course, Juri, the super famous Juri Han, everyone's simping for. And she has the Feng Shui engine in her eye, and that's what gives her like her, her special move abilities or whatever. She's quote unquote working for Shadowloo and for SIN, but she's actually working with Viper. She's like a double agent on both sides and stuff and everything. And so she kind of helps like take down Seth behind the scenes, when the plan starts falling apart and all that kind of junk.
Yeah, April 27, 2010. That was when Super Street Fighter 4 was released. 5 new stages, 10 new characters, new ultra combos, and all the characters got new introduction and ending movies. One thing we didn't actually talk about, Street Fighter 4, I really dug those little animated movies at the beginning and end of the arcade stuff. Like, I don't know. We didn't talk about that, but it bears mentioning because those were... I think it's necessary with Street Fighter, especially to kind of like help make sense of the story.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people can't figure it out. So I had forgotten about it, but picking it up again today and playing a little bit of it and seeing that stuff, I was like, oh yeah, that is something they did. That's really cool. I like that they did that. So getting new
is that they're actually different in Super Street Fighter 4. The Super Street Fighter 4 animated endings follow like a bit after the Street Fighter 4 animated endings.
Yeah, it gives you a reason to have both and play both, which is awesome because that's one of the big things people cry about with these things. It's like, what the hell is the point of this one then if I got to do this one? It's like, well, now they give you kind of a reason to mess with both, which is good.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I also forgot to mention that Street Fighter 4 and Super and all them do is they do the rival cutscenes now. Every character has a rival they face, and there's like a little cutscene of they bump into each other, hey, what you doing, or whatever, oh, let's fight, and all that. So
which is
It
something
adds
that
more to the story for certain characters, and they're more lore
brought
heavy.
that back. They brought that back from one of the earlier games because we were talking about that last time. Yeah, that was one of the best. That was one of the coolest things about that series too.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I also forget is the characters have extra lines during those matches. Like when you're playing the regular arcade mode, not the versus, but in the arcade mode, I forget the characters, but let's say like you and Ken, meet up, right? So they do the cutscene, cinematic cutscene. Hey Ken, how's it going? Hey, long time no see. Let's put our skills to the test. Whatever. When you're fighting, as you're fighting, depending on it's like if you're like the first guy to hit, if you're the first guy to do a super, that kind of stuff. The characters in game are like, hey, good moves there, Ken. Yeah, you've been improving, and that kind of crap. So that's kind of cool, I mostly remember when Guile fought Abel when they're fighting and stuff. Guile's like, hey, some good moves. You used to be a soldier of some sort, weren't you? Or something like that. So that's interesting. It adds more to the lore,
Yeah, I definitely think that was a cool thing they did. They made the most of the real estate, as we like to say. Anything to kind of enrich the actual just bare bones fighting stuff. Like one thing with these games, what goes a long way for me is whether I can play them at night on mute or whether I want to have the headphones in so I can actually hear what's going on. And, a lot of these Street Fighter games are ones you definitely want to put the headphones in. You definitely want to get not just the music, but all those little bells and whistles and all that good stuff. I mean, the presentation in all the Street Fighter 4 games is amazing. Like, it's just amazing.
One thing I also like for people is that it's the first game that you can hear they're in English now, so you can understand what they're saying. We've heard all their the yatas and stuff for the longest time. Now you hear Choni, I did it, and everything and things like that. So that's
I like that they give you the option to switch between them though, just for funsies. Yeah. That's one of those simple things where like, why wouldn't you do that? Mm-hmm. And especially as somebody who likes to import games for some of the systems where games are expensive, like the Saturn or the Dreamcast, a lot of times it bears just getting the Japanese one. I love doing that because it's so cool. Because then I get to even say, look, I got this awesome box full of stuff you can't read. Looks great. But yeah, they usually have the option. Most of the fighting games from Japan have the option, at least either the text is already in English or you can switch it if you want to. So I love that. And to me, that's such a simple thing. Like, why wouldn't you do that out of the box? But at the time, it was revolutionary.
Yeah. Johnny, what were some of your favorite characters in the Street Fighter 4 game, if you still remember?
My goodness. I don't really remember too much, to be honest.
I remember you so bad, Johnny. You were always using Cammy and Vega back then.
Okay, so I guess it would be Cammy and Vega. I mean, I think generally speaking, I just like cheesy characters. I like the cheesy characters like Vega. I like the Blancas. I just like to cheat. But I actually do like just the way Vega fights in general, and especially in the Street Fighter 4. I would say Street Fighter 4 / Street Fighter 5, but of course we're not going to talk about 5 right now. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, I feel like they really polished Vega as a character. Like he has more like techniques, and they just do more stuff with his claws, like in the older games, like he still has this technique, but in the newer ones, like they still add more things. Like I'm forgetting, but it's just more addition, more stuff that they add to Vega that makes him a little bit more of a well-rounded character.
One thing I loved with Vega real quick was when I was fighting him, I had forgotten about this, but it's so cool, was when he takes damage, he can lose his claw and his mask. And I just think that is a neat little thing, It's like, yeah, I popped for that one. It's been a while since I've seen it, but then when I remembered that could happen, I was like, oh, that is so cool.
Now, one thing I do want to bring up real quick as we go into the other games is that one thing I like more about like how Capcom did as opposed to how the Mortal Kombat games did it was that when Street Fighter 4 came out, that game was like $60. It was full price. But I'm thinking that keeping into consideration that you already paid $60 for Street Fighter 4. When they released Super Street Fighter and Ultra Street Fighter, they were at least $40 each. They didn't charge you the full, 60. So at least that's something. And the games were also set in a way, I don't know about the PS3 one, but on the Xbox One, it's like if you boot up Super Street Fighter and it recognizes that you have a save from part 4, you get extra costume colors and stuff. And then if you get Ultra, again, since you already own Super Street Fighter and 4, you get extra colors. So that's kind of cool. But on the flip side, Mortal Kombat costs like the full $60. They have all the DLC and junk, and of course you're spending money buying the DLC season passes. Then they release the Ultimate whatever for another $60. So you're wasting, you're just throwing all that money away, man.
Well, with Mortal Kombat, at least they're consistent that they're eventually going to do that. I mean, it's basically, at this point, it's just, impatient people are willing to pay more, and that's what keeps them doing their thing. So that is what that is. But at least they've been consistent. With NetherRealm, you're going to get that Ultimate Edition at some point later on. So if you're like me, and it takes you years to play anything anyway, you just wait for that, and you don't get screwed. It's only the impatient people who get screwed. And I don't feel too sorry for them, because the way gaming works as a service nowadays anyway, when a game comes out brand new and you play it right out of the box, you're basically being a guinea pig, right? You're playing the worst version of it because they still got to patch the bugs out. They still got to finish doing the DLC. They got to do all that shit. So, a game isn't really done until like 8 months after it comes out anymore. So with the Street Fighter 4s, I wasn't really too put off by that because we had barely played the vanilla version, so when these other ones were coming out, we were just like, we'll get to it. Now, I know some of the DLC stuff was a little bit controversial because some of it was already on the disc in some of the versions.
For Street Fighter X Tekken.
Oh, that's right. We'll get to that. Yeah. I got confused there. But yeah, a lot of it was like people thought it was a little overpriced for charging for costume colors and stuff like that. I haven't seen what they're down to now. I mean, stuff does sometimes go down. So maybe, like I said, I got to update my whole 360 library and finish it off, get all the DLC. So I'm hoping a lot of things are on sale for like clearance or whatever. I really hope so. But yeah, I know some people thought the DLC for the Street Fighter 4 games was a little excessive. One thing I thought was cool was that if you already had Super Street Fighter 4, you had the option of getting the arcade version of that game. Because originally it only came out for consoles, Super Street Fighter 4. And then it came out in the arcade a few months later. And then they put out the stuff that the arcade did or added. They put that out as Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. So you could buy Arcade Edition as a standalone disc, which is what we did. Or you could just download it as an upgrade to your Super Street Fighter 4 game. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was a neat thing. And then finally you had Ultra, by 2014, which, God, like that is cool in and of itself. Like they were, just like with Street Fighter 2, Capcom was able to support this Street Fighter 4 game for like 5 years by this point, right? That is crazy in and of itself. So that's when you finally had like the perfected version of the game. You had the 6 new stages, you had the 5 new characters, you had we'll talk about Street Fighter X Tekken, but that's what kind of they bled into each other, especially with the characters. But you had 44 fighters altogether, up from 19 in the vanilla version. That is insane.
Yeah.
So
yeah, one of those for order though. I want to say real quick, the arcade version added Yun Yang, Evil Ryu, which now looks different because usually Evil Ryu in the older games was just Ryu with a black gi. Now he looks more demonic. He has fangs. He's got like a fucking hole in his chest for whatever the fuck reason. I guess the power or some shit. So he has like an epic new design. And Oni, who is supposed to be, I guess, story-wise, it's supposed to be Akuma just fighting 100% all out, no holds back, completely consumed by the Satsui no Hado, if he wasn't already, and all that kind of crap. So those 4 characters, like you said, if you download, you could buy the arcade edition as a separate, like a physical disc, or just download it on top of your pre-existing Super Street Fighter, which I'm glad because I still have Super Street Fighter 4, the package and everything, because I had it autographed by Kyle Hebert, I think his name is, the guy who voices Ryu.
That's cool.
Laura Bailey voices Chun-Li, Travis Willingham voices Guile, and I forgot momentarily who voices Rufus, but he also signed it. And I didn't want to like get rid of it because, you know, so finding out you could just download it on your existing whatever, that was pretty cool, you know.
That was a nice thing they did, giving people options. Like nowadays, a lot of games are either disc or download, but at the time that was pretty revolutionary. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that was
But
one
I
of
want
the
to say
first
Street
times
Fighter
they would
4
do
was
that.
one of the last kind of games before they started with all the season pass stuff that later fighting games would start to do, you know. But
Well,
just kind of minor
easier.
footnotes because they kind of tie into the order. After Street Fighter, no, after Super Street Fighter, they released Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and that had Ryu and Ken, well, Ryu and then, but also had Crimson Viper from 4. So there was references to 4 in that game.
I dug that game. That game's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then Street Fighter Cross Tekken matters because it kind of goes into Ultra. Street Fighter Cross Tekken did a tag.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's
Let's
get
talk
into that
about
before
Street
we
Fighter
go.
Cross Tekken.
Yeah. So yeah, that one crosses over the Street Fighter characters and the Tekken characters, and they all play in a kind of Street Fighter style. So the more interesting thing is seeing how the Tekken characters adapt, because now they have like the circular motions, the uppercut motions and stuff for some of their moves. It's pretty interesting. I can't remember all the characters off the top of my head because it's too many, and I'm trying to forget which ones were DLC, which ones were not.
Well, yeah, there was a lot. There was 19 base characters from each series, and then 12 more for DLC, 6 of each. So there was quite a few. Yeah, what 2012 was a hell of a year. I mean, I guess they figured the meteors might as well wipe us out, so we might as well just throw everything we got at the wall and just get this out there because we might not get another chance.
Yeah.
Now, the downside being that Tekken Cross Street Fighter ended up not coming out.
Yeah, originally that was the plan. Street Fighter Cross Tekken made by Capcom in their style, and then Tekken Cross Street Fighter in the Tekken style by Namco, but that just never happened. But
That's 'cause the game got great reviews, but they needed to they projected to sell 4 million, and they only sold 1 million.
yeah,
Only 1 million. Remember back in the Nintendo days when selling 1 million copies would get you a big blurb on the front of your box? Now, and then in 2012, 1 million sales get you fucking canceled.
yeah. So that game, their plot it's a made-up plot anyways, is that the Pandora box fell on Earth and everyone wants to go get it for, you know, separate reasons or whatever. And the interesting thing about that game is that game is kind of like, you know, story-wise, it's kind of like the Turtles and Batman crossover. Because, you know, there's other crossovers where characters, you know, go to alternate dimensions and whatever the fuck. But in Batman versus with the Turtles, it's kind of like, oh, Gotham City was there all along. We just, you know, never had a reason to go there. And that's how it was here. In this game, it's also like, oh, the Street Fighters and Tekken characters always coexisted. It just so happens that, you know, the Shadaloo guys never messed with the Mishima Saibatsu guys. And I guess Ryu never wanted to enter the King of the Iron Fist tournament. Might have been boring, or maybe was busy doing alpha stuff. Like,
They didn't book them. You don't go if you're not booked. You just look desperate.
yeah.
That's a day one.
Yeah. But yeah, so the two big controversies with that game, that was one even I went into, was the fact that there were like, I think maybe 10 or so extra characters that were supposed to be DLC, but they were actually already in the disc. And when you quote unquote bought them, you're not really buying the characters, you're just buying like a secret code to unlock them. And I remember that back then, the excuse was that the characters weren't finished or whatever, but like they hacked them. And there were very few times that, like on streaming and stuff, you would see these characters there, and you know they would, you know, Capcom would quickly put their kibosh on that shit. You know, try to erase all evidence and stuff. But
I'll say this: like, I have friends who, whether it was based on that specific game or just that practice in general of having you pay for stuff that's already on the disc, some of my friends completely do not do any DLC at all on principle because of that thing. So to me, that's a bit extreme, but it goes to show you how much some people were really pissed off about that.
yeah,
I know people who are like, well, I'm not paying for shit that's already on the fucking disc. I'm not paying these motherfuckers for all. They could put a fucking for $70, they could put a complete game out, or they could suck my butt. And I don't agree with it because to me, so many games are so much better because of the DLC. I could never be mad at DLC, regardless of how it gets there. It makes games better in the long run. It's annoying to have to pay more, but it adds things, it fixes things. DLC makes games better objectively. So you got to kind of roll with the punches on these things, but I empathize with their opinion that paying for stuff that you already technically should have with your original $60 investment, it's not asking for a lot in that respect. I can understand why they're mad about that. I don't agree with them not getting any DLC ever. That to me seems like cutting off your nose to spite your face. But, I empathize with the moral stance.
Yeah. I mostly like only DLC when it's obvious that it was not there from the get-go. Like the latest, not this Mortal Kombat, but the Mortal Kombat before, it was obvious that since day one, the plan was not to have the Ninja Turtles and RoboCop and whoever else in that game. You know what I mean? Like, that came out later, And then the Turtles, Cowabunga, no, not the Cowabunga, the Shredder's Revenge with that new DLC added on. Like, that was stuff that was not intended from the get-go. So I like those things that add to the games, but not stuff
It was a little tedious, but it was a lot of fun. I definitely had a lot of fun with it. I still got to finish getting all the costumes. I'm like 2/3 of the way there, I think. I've beaten that thing way too much. It does get a little numbing after a while, but I mean, it's a beat 'em up. And it's a very good one, though. It's a really great game. I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Ninja Turtles, upcoming on From the Vault, we're going to be talking about Playmates' recent movie star turtle reissue figures. We're going to talk about what's the same, what's different, what's cool, what's not cool. We're going to be talking about that on From the Vault, Rikki Roxx Retro Action Figure Review, pimping my channel here on the podcast. Because I have no shame.
That's my thing. I'm checking that out. I want to see that, like the differences and things. That kind of thing always, interests me, particularly with the turtle figures. So that's more the stuff I grew up with, But
Did Jupi what did Jupi think about Street Fighter X Tekken? Whether it be as an idea or as an actual game, I thought it was a great idea.
Never played it.
Oh, jeez.
I just don't do fighting games, so not really.
Johnny, any thoughts or memories on it?
Did you I'm sure you heard it was a thing. Because I'll lead us in there. I'll get it rolling. I remember I was always a huge fanatic for video game magazines all the way back to my early childhood from the beginning when they were a thing. And so I remember reading Electronic Gaming Monthly and their big story on Street Fighter X Tekken and how it was crossover fighting games had been done before, obviously. I mean, Capcom wrote the book on that shit. But this was two dramatically different fighting game series coming together, completely different styles, aesthetic, gameplay, and even someone like me who had only been at Street Fighter and forget Tekken. I am no good at that. I don't know what it is. I got to try it again. I will try it again. But I was never a big Tekken guy. But for me, Street Fighter X Tekken, reading about it was fascinating. And it made me excited for it, even if all I ever did was watch somebody else play it. It was just like, this is the kind of thing I wish people did more in this industry, in this medium, in this video game medium. I wish people did this more. And the idea right from the beginning, they said, also, we're going to flip this over, and we're going to do Tekken Cross Street Fighter. And it's going to be the same thing from the other direction. I'm like, that is so freaking cool. I wish everybody did this. And unfortunately, they projected 4 million sales, and they only sold 1.2 or 1.4 million. So the reviews were fantastic. But for some stupid reason, maybe you guys heard a reason, but for some dumb reason, it did not sell well. And it's weird because this was after Street Fighter 4 had been out for a few years and did great. And Tekken was also in a good place. So I sincerely could not understand why the game didn't sell much better than it did, because people were hot for both franchises at the time. There's a lot of heat, brother. And it's just, it had everything you'd think you could want. The tag team fighting, right? And you could swap in and out. That was just like Marvel Capcom in that sense. And then you had the huge roster of characters from both Street Fighter and Tekken universes. And the fact that both sides of that equation brought so many different things to the table, it was just such an intriguing idea. And, you know, especially when the reviews were fantastic. And then to hear, oh, yeah, people didn't really pay attention to it. It's like, what are you, smoking actual crack?
It was mostly the DLC scandal thing, and also because the game had like, I forgot what they did. The game had like gems or something, and I guess the gems affected your whatever your stats and stuff. And they were selling like gem DLC, and they're really pushing the gem DLC, and that turned off everyone and stuff like that.
Yeah, but people forget you don't have to do it.
Yeah, I know, but
It's an inconvenience, and I get that in 2012 it was still kind of an open wound. We're more used to it now. When
yeah.
I buy a WWE game for $60, I know I'm paying another 60 right up. I know because I'm gonna get that friggin' DLC pack with Diamond Dallas Page and the WCW guys, and I know
NWO.
I'm gonna do all that. I accept it now. Back then, I understand that people were raw about, oh my God, I got to pay $2 to give Ken a different color outfit. Like, and this character's already on the disc and I got to pay fucking $5 to unlock him. That's bullshit. I get it, but like, dude, your fucking ass hurts. Get over it at some point. Like, you know, if you want to have the best experience, you're going to pay a premium. It's economics. It's the video game industry. And
Oh, I almost forgot. The PS3 version had characters that were not in the Xbox version because they had rights to, like, I guess some of the Namco characters. They had Pac-Man as a playable character, and they got what everyone calls the bad box art Mega Man as a Capcom character. And I think in the
That's where
Japanese
that came
version,
from.
huh?
That's where that came from.
yeah,
Well, I mean, he was originally because that's how he was drawn on the cover of the very first American Mega Man box art.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, in Japan he was always drawn proper, but you know, America,
Okay.
they didn't get the memo, especially since in part 2 the box art has Mega Man holding a gun. Like the guys didn't know, like, dude, no, he does not hold a gun. His arm becomes a gun. You know what I mean? But anyways, yeah, the only thing that's kind of whatever is that Mega Man is supposed to be Mega Man, even though he looks like a weird dude. But this version, they made him cowardly. They made him like a dude, like with a fat gut or whatever. That was just weird.
it was weird, but I thought it was funny because, like, it's kind of like Adam West Batman to me. It's like, it's not my preferred version of the shit, but I like whenever anything winks at its own history. I love it because you have to be able to do that. Like, I'm a Superman fan. I can't just pretend the 50s didn't happen. I would like to, but I can't. It's a thing that fucking happened. So when people throw back to it and they wink at it and they make fun of it or they say they love it or whatever, I have to just laugh and clap along because it's cool, you know? So it was the kind of thing where, you know, it was goofy and it was stupid, but who the fuck did it hurt? Maybe they could have balanced it out by also putting proper Mega Man in as a playable character. But yeah, I thought having bad box Mega Man included as a character was fucking awesome because it's just a stupid thing to do, to have a little fun and throw a wink at a shameful but important chapter in the character's history. And when else would you really get an opportunity to do that? I thought it was neat.
Yeah, I mean, the only part that I didn't think was neat was that they were not in the Xbox version, so we're like missing 2 characters. That's the part that kind of...
I always hate when they do that because, like, I think with Soul Calibur 4, I think I missed getting Yoda or something from that because of how, like, you know, the 360 version, you could download Darth Vader, and the PS3 version, you could download Yoda, and, like, at one point, you could buy the other one. But after a while, they took it off the market. So you snooze, you lose. So yeah, I missed getting some fucking Star Wars shit for that. I really don't like when they do that. I didn't like that with the Arkham games. They used to do that. They always had characters that were only on the PS3 version. That pissed me off. Like, both versions would sell you the kit of all the stuff from the Adam West TV show, the Robin skin, the Batmobile, all that stuff, but not Adam West Batman. You can only get him on PS3. And that just made me furious, you know? Like, we'll talk more about Street Fighter V, but I'm never in favor of console exclusive content to that degree. I just think it screws people over. You lock out an entire audience of millions of people who would want this thing that you're selling, and they can't have it because they're not willing to spend $400 on another system.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's fair. That's my problem with that.
Now, one thing I do want to bring up before we go into Ultra Street Fighter 4, because there's still some things left to go, and there's a reason why I wanted to kind of cut in with Cross Tekken first, is because in the Cross Tekken side, most of the Street Fighter assets were from Street Fighter 4, just kind of sort of redrawn, because they are kind of redrawn. They had extra, I think they overdid the ink a bit. They had more ink splotches and stuff for the Tekken, for the game. But anyway, aside from Ryu and Ken and all them, they were already in, the regular Street Fighter 4. They did add Poison, Rolento, Hugo, and there was someone else. God. Oh, Elena. Yeah. Did I already say? Yeah, Poison, Hugo, Elena, Rolento. So those 4 new characters completely like drawn from the ground up and stuff.
Elena is always welcome. Elena is always welcome.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So when we leave, when we go, they released Ultra Street Fighter 4 now, and it brought in those 4 characters. Now, one thing I do want to say, I forgot to mention in Super Street Fighter 2, one of the things was in original Street Fighter 4, everyone only had one cinematic super. Like, you had a bar in the bottom that would fill up to do like a regular super, but, without the cinematic or whatever. But then, like, you had one that was all, the camera zooms in, Ryu's doing shit, and okay, and all that kind of crap. But,
love it. Love everything about it.
Yep, but then Super Street Fighter added another one. So now people had 2 different arts or critical arts, or whatever they're calling it. Each game gives it a different name. But now, so it's cool because not only do the new characters have them, all the old characters from before, now they got a second one. So you're playing the game again to discover what's like, what's Sakura's second uppercut thing, what's Blanca's second critical art and things like that. So Ultra Street Fighter 4 gave you those options. But you also added an extra Omega mode where you could select both of them instead of having to choose.
Well, real quick,
so similar to. Sorry, Glenn.
I don't think we heard what Johnny had to say about Street Fighter Cross Tekken, whether it be as an idea or as a game itself. Because I talked a lot about it. Like I said, to me, it was a great idea. I think I've played the game a tiny little bit, but to me, it's the kind of thing I wish we saw more of in fighting games, and I wish it did better. But what do you think, Johnny Rodriguez?
Okay, going a little back on the Street Fighter Cross Tekken, I enjoy the concepts. It's very cool to finally have Tekken characters against Street Fighter characters, and it's cool that now the Tekken characters have to adapt themselves towards the Capcom style game. And I do apologize for this audio. I don't know why this audio is having this issue today in particular. I've never had problems with Zoom, but today it just keeps doing that whenever I'm talking. I don't know if it's happening to you guys, or if you could hear any interference when I'm talking. Okay, well, the concept is pretty cool. The gameplay, I'm not going to say it's bad, but I still think that I do feel that it felt a little bit short on some of the Tekken characters. Like, it just didn't. I feel like it isn't really. They could have adapted it a little bit better, in my opinion. I felt like some of the Tekken characters felt a little short in the Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Yeah, that's the title, right? Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Like it sort of maybe could have been a little bit more balanced, better in favor of some of the Tekken characters, essentially.
Yeah.
I think so because it almost felt like okay, like I do get it that this is more of a Capcom game, you know, because it's so like Street Fighter characters featuring Tekken characters, right? But I felt like the Tekken characters they didn't adapt in. They were not well adapted towards the Street Fighter style gameplay, I guess. So some of the Tekken characters actually felt a little bit on the weak side compared to you know actually playing them on Tekken.
Yeah, I've definitely
then-
heard people say that. I've definitely heard people say that for sure.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, their entire play style is different, so you have to kind of relearn them and everything. And
Yeah.
I guess two of the complaints I heard whenever we did our BGM episode to review that, because you have to keep in mind that the game, I mean, you know, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, you need some Tekken elements there. So the two complaints were, well, actually three complaints. The biggest complaint was that it played the tag team feature came from Tekken Tag Tournament, and in Tekken Tag Tournament, when you defeat one person, that's it. They lose the round. As opposed to like Marvel vs. Capcom, for example, where it goes until all the people are defeated, you know? So a
Yeah.
lot of people didn't like that. And I had to tell, well, guys, it's based on Tekken Tag, but they didn't like that. They didn't like that you just beat Chun-Li and bam, your whole team loses.
Now, they could have easily given you the option,
Yeah.
and that right there would have. I'm assuming that if they had done the second game, they would have probably. I hope they would have flipped it. But in either case, even if you give somebody the option to even do it one and done or elimination style, giving people that choice, I think would have definitely made a lot of people happy.
Yeah. Then the second one was the super moves because it's based on Tekken. Like in Tekken, some of the characters, but you know, the newer games have other ways, but in the older Tekken 1 through 4, whatever, you have to do the thing where you hold the character, they kind of like charge or whatever, and then do a big powerful something that knocks your ass, you know, knocks half your bar or something.
I'm not good at second.
Yeah. So the thing about that is that unfortunately you're a sitting duck, you know. So most of the characters all the characters in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, you gotta do that. You gotta do like a fireball or something, but keep the punch pressed while the character does their whatever. But the bad thing is that you're a sitting duck while you're doing that, and you know, so people didn't like that either. It's like you could be charging up, you can just walk up and bop them and
See,
whatever.
I can see why that would be problematic against the more frenetic, high-paced fighting style of Street Fighter because,
Yeah.
you know, and even in Street Fighter, the worst guys to pick are usually the ones who have to charge up their moves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see why that would be a problem. Even as somebody who has not played a lot of the Tekken, I could see why that would be a translation problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you got to figure as they did more of them, they would have probably balanced that kind of thing out. You'd hope.
Yeah. The third complaint is Hugo in general. His super takes off way too much damage. And when you do like the tag team super and he's like the last, because you know, you could do it like if you got Chun-Li and Ryu, for example, Chun-Li does a couple of kicks or something and she kicks you towards Ryu and then Ryu does his super, you know? So if you pick someone else and you got Hugo and you do whatever, I mean, dude, half or more than half your bar is already gone with that one move. So that's, people didn't like that.
Yeah,
And I
mean,
get the gimmick that you know that he's supposed to be the super big, ultra powerful guy, but still, like, dude, it's you know.
yeah, I
balance
really,
yourself.
I really feel like, you know, those are all really valid. Those are all really valid things to have an opinion about.
Mhm.
I still wish the game had sold better because I would have loved to get that second half selfishly,
Yeah, me
you know, for as valid as those criticisms are, because they absolutely are. Even as somebody who only knows a little bit about the Tekken and you know, has mostly observed the whole Street Fighter Cross Tekken thing from afar, you know, these are the kind of things where you'd hope that if they had gotten to the second half, it would have been a little more balanced. Some of these things would have been smoothed over. You know, in the big picture, it is a real shame we didn't get the other half. As much as it could have been a little bit smoothed over the first time around, I still feel that we're worse off for not having gotten the other half. You know, what can you do? Never say never, right? We've seen that a million times.
Yeah. So the thing I wanted to say with before going to Ultra Street Fighter was that Super Street Fighter gave people 2 animated supers instead of just one, but it was similar to Street Fighter 3 in the aspect that you have to choose which one do you want, you know. So Ultra Street Fighter 2 added Street Fighter 4, I mean, Ultra Street Fighter 4 gave you the option to, you could do it, you know, choose one or the other, or you could choose both, but if you choose both, they're going to be weaker in comparison. So, you know, it kind of trades off, you know. And the big thing about that game I remember the most was that they announced, you know, 5 new characters, and it was gonna be, you know, Rolento, Elena, Poison, and Hugo with a mysterious 5th character, and it wasn't like announced. So we had all the people, you know, they're throwing their guesses, and you know, it has to be this character. This character is awesome, and they're missing, or it has to be this character because you know the lore implications, all that shit. And in the end, everyone got pissed because the final character was the Capre, who is like another Shadowloo doll. I guess she's Cammy's like sister, and she fights with a claw. So everybody was saying, "Oh, great, it's Cammy with Vega's claw," and everyone got like so pissed and so disappointed, you know, with the build up and everything. But that was the final character to wrap up Street Fighter 4, and like you said, like 44 or so characters at the end. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be mad at a lot of people if they skipped right to Ultra. I mean, it definitely felt like the most complete package, but still, you wouldn't have gotten there without the steps they took along the way. To me, it's kind of crazy that, you know, they were able to stretch Street Fighter 4 over a 5-year, 6-year period. That's pretty incredible all by itself. I mean, they wouldn't do it if it wasn't working, if they weren't making money on it. So, worked out pretty good for them. You know, I'm sure any losses they had on account of the Cross Tekken experiment were offset by stuff that happened since then, like Ultra and Street Fighter 5. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Also,
haven't.
some of the stages, the Capcom related stages from Cross Tekken were put into Ultra Street Fighter 4. So you got like the Magyar hideout and all of them.
Yeah, I still have to, you know, like I said, get the complete versions of each of the Street Fighter 4 games. But yeah, on the whole, you know, Street Fighter 4 as a series definitely did very well for them, you know, considering that at the beginning they weren't even sure about doing it at all, you know, which I kind of understand as it's a big commitment, and the Street Fighter brand had sort of just faded out of favor for no good reason, mind you. But by 2008, you know, Street Fighter was a thing you got in old compilation game discs. You didn't go to the arcade and play Street Fighter anymore. And it was weird because that was the thing that gave the arcade second life in the 90s with Street Fighter. That decade where it went away for all intents and purposes, even though you could still play the EX series and stuff. You could still play them at home, but it was weird. Nobody talked about them, and they were just a thing that had been done and gone. But then they were able to bring it back, and not only bring it back, but re-release it again, re-release it again. And over a 5-year period, they were able to keep making money on it. So there definitely was an audience there and a hunger for it. That's not in dispute. There was just something, I guess, about the EX games and the Alpha games and the 3 series that didn't quite hook people enough to make them hungry for more for a really long time, because people were happy playing the new Mortal Kombat or the new Tekken instead. They didn't need Street Fighter. But all of a sudden, they reminded you why you needed Street Fighter. And that was the thing about Street Fighter 4, is that, like, you didn't know you needed Street Fighter anymore until they reminded you why you needed it. And there it was, and it was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what you do. That's exactly how you do it. And so I think that whole thing is pretty cool. And I wasn't mad about all the updates over the years because, again, by that point, that's what you expect from Street Fighter. They did it with 2, they did it with Alpha, they did it with 3. If you thought they weren't going to do the same thing with 4, you don't know Capcom at all. So I wasn't even annoyed about that. And by the end, just like with Street Fighter 2 and all the others, in the end, they gave you this perfected ultimate version of the game. And if you wanted to, you could skip right to that one. But it's still cool seeing all the little incremental improvements along the way. That's why I love playing these games as a series and not just skipping to the best one. But that's me. But yeah, on the whole, I don't think anybody could say it was anything but a success for Capcom. Definitely, like Johnny said, the game that brought Street Fighter back to life, revived the brand for a whole new generation. Got to get that in there, Street Fighter conversation. But yeah.
Any final thoughts there, Johnny, before we go to 5 in general?
Yeah, sum up your thoughts on Street Fighter 4 as a whole for us, Johnny. All the different versions, the vanilla, super, ultra, all that stuff. Tell us what you
Okay,
think.
well, my memory lane isn't really the greatest at this moment, so I'm really not going to remember the whole shebangle when it comes in terms of the whole Street Fighter 4 franchise. But just generally speaking, it brought the game back to the spotlight. The graphics are very impressive. This is like the best, Street Fighter have looked in a long time.
Absolutely.
In time period, especially. And yeah, it's just a good game in general, and it brought people back together, liking the original style of fighting game,
Yeah.
I mean, what's amazing is that, the evolution over time from the original, like 19 or whatever characters, 25 on the consoles, all the way up to 44 at the end, and all the new stages along the way. I mean, people always make fun of Capcom for milking content over the years for a series like this, but, progress happens. You got to give people time to grow and room to outperform themselves. And, each version of the game gave you a little bit more and kept you wanting more. And, by the end of it, you got a pretty complete package. So I think on the whole, like I said, it's yeah, they want money. Yeah, they want to keep you paying for the same thing over and over. But, they do give you something worth paying for, I think. So in the end, it's worth the journey, I always say. I thought it was a great thing they did. I think Street Fighter 4 was a great gift they gave to the fans. And, what else could be said than that, really?